Hey everyone, GC Smith here and welcome to another Magic the Gathering video. Today I want to talk to you guys about Theros Block Constructed, and one of the deck ideas I've come up with that I think could actually be a deck that could, with tweaking and seeing what comes in the next few sets, be quite of a bomb of a deck. At least in my opinion, I think it's got a potential, and hopefully it will be a deck that you guys find interesting as well. Now, I know what a few of you are thinking right there before we get into the deck building or deck discussion. A lot of you out there may be thinking, but Theros Block Constructed still needs Born of the Gods and Journey to Nyx to be complete. You know, right now there isn't a block, there's only Theros. And you'd be right. And I would agree with you that maybe doing a whole video on a deck tech, such a thing, would possibly be a bit premature. But saying that, shops still run Theros Block Constructed events at the moment. Try and shift away from just doing the normal standard tournaments or drafting every week. So that I have seen those kind of events happening, as well as on Magic the Gathering Online. There's a few daily events where people, the daily events which run Theros Block Constructed, I've seen different decks being run for. So I thought it's not really that bad to start looking at deck ideas, especially since these are going to be using cards that currently exist in the Theros Block Constructed and will exist, and are cards which I don't necessarily think will be invalidated necessarily by the next sets to come. The next sets, in my opinion, will only maybe add different deck types or different cards to fit into the deck, maybe even better ones. I don't think will make this deck terrible, at least from what I have opinion of this deck. Now, hopefully I'll be able to do several of these videos, each video focusing on a different deck idea, and maybe sometimes occasionally going back to the previous deck idea, with more knowledge and playtesting and that kind of thing. Although I can imagine I probably won't revisit decks until at least after Born of the Gods is released in February. So until then, we're going to be doing quite a few videos hopefully on Theros Block Constructed, though not necessarily regularly. I'm not sure when I'll do them. I just wanted to get this first one done out of the way while I had the idea for the deck. And we'll see what inspiration brings me, or what you guys bring me in comments for my videos. Now, this video is going to hopefully start discussion, so if you want to participate and talk about what you think about my idea in the comments below the video, don't be afraid to do so. And also, if you want to be seeing more of these videos, don't forget to like it. And if you want to watch more of these videos when they come out, don't forget to hit subscribe. So the deck idea I have for you guys today is Esper Heroic. A deck idea I came up with, or homebrewed, and I thought it was that's actually quite cool. It's a different twist on Esper. You see, a lot of people are playing Esper in standard at the moment, but most of them are playing Esper Control, which stands to reason due to the sheer amount of control that the colours of black, white and blue give you. But in Theros, there isn't that much removal at the moment. In fact, the only really good removal is Hero's Downfall. And as such, you can't really build a controlling deck. However, the colours of black, white and blue do, however, give you, probably in my opinion, the best heroic, not only heroic cards, so the cards with the heroic triggers, but also the best triggers for triggering those heroic cards. I just think it's an all-down amazing colour combo for building a heroic deck, far better than any of the other colour combos. Now, I can imagine a few of you thinking, well, okay, so maybe yes, there are a lot of good cards in black, white and blue, and okay, they might argue better than some of the other heroic triggers than, say, green or red, especially for Block Constructed. But why would you build 3 colours? I mean, surely you can just go white and blue. A lot of heroic decks, especially in limited formats in Theros at the moment, are just white blue. Why go white blue black? And I do have some reasoning for this before we get into the cards that are going to be in this deck, and that is Theros is a slower format at the moment than Standard is, and even more than, say, sets like Ravnica were. The only dual-coloured lands in this set are Scrylands, the temples, which enter tapped and allow you to scry for 1. And as such, dual-coloured decks, or multicoloured decks, are going to be slower than their monocoloured counterparts. However, the only real monocoloured decks we're seeing at the moment are things like Devotion, and these rely a lot on cards from outside of the Theros block cards like Night Veil Spectre, cards like Burning Tree Emissary, cards like Tidebinder Mage from M14. You know, all of these cards don't exist within Theros, and I think are reasons why a lot of players will end up playing multicolored when it comes to Theros Block Constructed. And when it comes to multicolored at the moment, I do really think 3 colours is better than 2 colours overall. When you go 2 colours, you've only got access to 1 Skyland, so you can have 4 copies in your deck. Whereas the moment you go 3 colours, you can have 12 separate Skylands, because now you have 3 different lands available to you. So that gives you a large variety of dual lands available to you, gives you a large access to multicoloured lands, and allows you a large variety of mana, different colours to be played. Now, obviously, these colours do enter tapped, all these lands, and so the argument could be made that maybe dual colour would be better because, okay, you've got less mana fixing, but the mana you do play enters untapped and your deck will be quicker, which does make sense, but at the moment I do think Theros Block Constructed looks like it's going to be very much a more, not saying mid-range, but not so much of a push of aggro, turn 1, 2, 3 win. It's going to be turn 4, 5, 6 onwards that you start winning games. And as such, I do think that maybe Tricoloured has the ability to stick into the game, and there are a lot of tools available for them to not only stick into the game, but once they're stuck into the game, go on to win it. That's one of the advantages in Skylands, in my opinion, is actually the Scry really does help you get rid of things you don't want, other Skylands if you've got enough of them, and get down to the real meat and bones of your deck. And having more Skylands gives you more Scry, which gives you more ability to filter your deck, which means you're more likely to draw the powerful bombs you want to be drawing against each opponent. So I do think maybe 3 colour might be better than 2 colour. I mean, it's still a bit iffy on that basis. But another reason to go 3 colour, especially for Heroic, is for a Heroic deck you need a good mix of Heroic cards and Heroic triggers, and black, blue, white give you the best mix of all of them. Imagine it like Jund for Heroic. Jund is normally it's black, green, red, and you're going I want the best creatures, the best spells, all of this, and you put it in one deck, you get Jund, red, black, green. Well, if you want all the best Heroic creatures, all the best Heroic cards, you go black, blue, white, because it gives you access to some really good cards, which hopefully, as I talk to you about them, will appear somewhere on the screen. If they don't, hopefully they'll be in the description below, the links to these cards so you can see exactly what they do. But I do hope they'll be on the screen somewhere, even if it's just small, so you can get an image of the card, and then again go to the description and see the card in full detail. So this Esper Heroic deck does have a few core cards to the deck that I think are essential for building this deck around, and then there are a few options for different cards to take the deck in different ways and do different cool things in the deck that may not be so competitive in, say, Standard, but in Block Constructed could see a bit of play here and there, and might make the deck interesting, and might maybe even add some power to the deck. So first off, we're going to talk about the the stone, the rock of the deck, what the deck's built around, and then maybe go on to some of the fringier cards that you may want to play with here and there. And those fringe cards do go from, say, more likely cards to some cards which I would like to see work, but probably wouldn't. So the first anchor of the deck, the first rock of the deck, is actually one of my first favourite cards from the Theros block, Agent of the Fates. A 3 converted mana cost card with 1 colourless, 2 black, a 3/2 with Death Touch, and its heroic trigger is whenever this, whenever you trigger a heroic, I don't know if it's target or each opponent, I can't quite remember, but it will be on screen. I think it's target, sacrifices a creature. So you heroic trigger, cast a spell on it, and an opponent has to sacrifice a creature, which is amazing. As I say, Theros, as I'd like to say, Theros doesn't really have a lot of removal. The only really reliable removal is Hero's Downfall, and as such, being able to turn heroic triggers cards into removal is great. It also gets around some of the really annoying things like gods, because you can sack a god whereas you can't destroy it, although they wouldn't if a god's active and as a creature, so allowing them to sack it. They'll probably just sack one of the things that's making it a creature. but that option there does exist. It's also got Death Touch, which allows it to deal with any of the big beasts in Theros, and most of these big creatures that start big in Theros don't have trample, so its low toughness doesn't really matter there. It allows it to trade effectively with some of those really big creatures. But because we're a heroic deck, we've got combat tricks to kind of give it the advantage in those fights, and keep it alive in maybe some of these trades. And so, you know, it's a really good card overall. It's a really good powerhouse for the deck. Not necessarily the most powerful card, but it's definitely a card I reckon running main board you really should do in an Esper Heroic deck because of the removal it gives you. You know, it's already doing really good with its Death Touch 3/2. It's already a card that a lot of people wouldn't want to block because they wouldn't want to lose Polychronos to it. And as such, it can easily swing for 3 repeatedly. It's also a card that deals with things like Polychronos, which are really big bombs in Standard, and therefore will be really good in maybe Block Constructed, because the moment Polychronos is monstrous, if it even touches Agent of the Fates with its monstrous trigger, it dies. So it most likely probably wouldn't even trigger its or target Agent of Fates with its Heroic, and probably try and avoid Agent of the Fates, giving you a free thing to attack with for 3 damage every turn, which after a while will build up. So it's a great card to include, and I do think it's going to see, if this deck sees play, Agent of Fates will be in it. Now the second card of the deck is probably a bit of a stronger rock. It's probably a card which is a lot more powerful in most circumstances. It's a great card, it's just all round powerful, and that is Fabled Hero. Fabled Hero, a 3 converted mana cost, 1 colorless, 2 white, with double strike, and its heroic trigger is it gets a 1/1 counter. Well, it's just a really good card. Target with a spell, it becomes a 3/3 with double strike. You target with something, it's immediately doing 6 damage in its combat phase. And that plays really well into some of the other cards we'll have in this deck, because in Theros, making that creature unblockable isn't too hard, especially not for Esper Heroic, because we have access to some crazy ways to make the creature unblockable, or unblockable for the turn, and as such, you know, makes that double strike 3/2 really good, especially when some of those ways for making Heroic will trigger, making it unblockable will trigger Heroic. It's going to be swinging for a lot of damage regularly, and is definitely a creature you want to have in any Heroic deck, especially Esper Heroic. Another good creature to have is Thassa. As I say, we have great ways to make things unblockable, and Thassa is one of these. While it won't regularly ever really hit I'm a Monster power, in this, like, you know, we'll never hit Devotion to make it a 5/5 creature that you can make unblockable. It's going to be in there simply because it allows you to scry before you draw, so it helps get your draws better, as well as granting one of your creatures or multiple of your creatures each turn just for 2 mana each creature that you want to, you make it unblockable. So if you've invested a lot of mana into something like a Fabled Hero, and it's already quite big, it's 5/5/6/6, make it unblockable, you're doing 10-12 damage to your opponent. They can't take that more than once. You know, that is a 2-turn clock, and they are going to be losing. And again, with the limited removal in the format, not much they can do about it. They can be black or white decks, and maybe they can deal with it, and even then they have to draw the removal to deal with it, and then you've got ways around that removal, so really not that big an issue. Another creature I'd like to say is maybe, there's another 2 creatures actually I'd like to say, sorry, that might be rocks, and might see good play in this deck, though I'm umming and ahhing about what they would be there for, really. One of them is Omen Speaker. Now this isn't a heroic creature, so it won't trigger off heroic triggers and spells, but for 2 mana it is a 1/3, and so really, well, I did say before that the Theros isn't really a aggro-y format at the moment. It doesn't have many cards. There's still things like a Cronian Crusader or Cronian Hoplite, however, is the 1-drop that makes other tokens when you trigger Heroic, and each of those have haste. Those things can be quite annoying for this deck to deal with, and so Omen Speaker gives you something to block them with early game. And again, it deals with things like Fire Drinker Satyr, which would be a deck that a lot of aggro cards run, and basically just blocks and they go, you take 1, you know, Fire Drinker Satyr dies, you take 1 damage. It's not, you know, it's not a card to be sniffed at, and when it enters the battlefield, does secure your next 2 draws. or at least gets rid of 2 cards you want to get rid of at least. So it's not that bad a card, and I definitely think it can see some play here, because it does seem playing a lot of decks just because they're running blue. You put an Omen Speaker in. Another card here is Battle-Wise Hoplite. Again, this is a card that's a bit... I'm not really sure if it does belong here, though it does have Heroic, and it's quite good. 2/2 for 2, 1 white, 1 blue. So it's a bear card with Heroic trigger, that whenever you trigger hits Heroic, put 1 counter on it and scry 1. So a bit like Omen Speaker, it allows you to secure your draws, but only does so when you use Heroic trigger on it. However, Heroic trigger on it does make it more powerful at the same time, so you're never really wasting a Heroic trigger on it. You're actually getting a scry plus your Heroic trigger on it and the 1/1 counter, so you're getting a lot out of any triggers on it. So it could see play. Bears see a lot of play in all formats, so I wouldn't be surprised if it sees play, especially since we want to get drops before turn 4 or turn 3. So getting that into your deck won't be a bad thing at all. Now, obviously we've got some rock heroic creatures, the Agent of Fate and the Fabled Hero, and we need some rock heroic triggers to really go with those cards, to make the deck solid, so we know we're going to be able to trigger heroic regularly, and these heroic triggers are going to be good cards that we will want in the deck. They're not going to be cards that we want to get rid of, or cards we're only running to trigger heroic. These are cards that will do well, as well as triggering heroic. And the first of these cards is God's Willing. A 1 white drop instant that gives target creature protection from a colour of your choice. This is an all-round great card for any heroic deck, and fits really well in this deck. When you're running things like Fabled Hero and... not just running things like Fabled Hero, any heroic deck has to invest a lot of mana in its heroic creatures. And because of that... pardon me. Because of that, being 2 for 1 can happen fairly regularly. So having things like God's Willing to give your creature protection so it can't be hit by spot removal. Things like, as I say, Hero's Downfall, as well as things like the White Exile card, or if it's the Agent of the Fates, the Dark Betrayal. Being able to avoid those cards is always very good. Another good thing about that card is because it gives you protection from the colour of your choice, that creature can't be blocked by that colour. So you can always do it to make the creature unblockable. And again, on things like Fabled Hero, which get effectively +2/+2 for the... they effectively get +2 power from this. So you've got Fabled Hero, if it's already at 4, you God's Willing it and swing, you're swinging for 10, because for +1 from God's Willing, trigger, the heroic trigger, you're swinging for 10 damage, unblockable, which is very, very, very good. And if you go up against a monocolored deck, well, they can't interact with that card at all for the rest of the turn. It's a lot of damage to be doing, and as well, it just protects your investment of the cards. If you do run things like Battle-Wise Hoplite, or even Agent of the Fates, it does protect those cards. For Agent of Fates, it does allow a lot more favourable blocking against things like some of the monsters. You block a monster, you God's Willing it, and not only does you beat that monster, but you might end up taking a different card with it as well. There may be another card, although technically, if he was intelligent enough, he probably would just sack the creature you blocked, or whatever. But you could actually run it before you attack to kill a card off. I mean, okay, they wouldn't be able to block the Agent of Fates there, but they might be able to block one of the other creatures, so being able to kill a creature off before combat, it's not a bad thing. Another good heroic trigger, and one of the great heroic triggers as well, is Triton Tactics. Again, a 1-drop, this time blue. It targets 2 creatures, so again, this one will trigger 2 heroic triggers, which is great for a 1-drop. It untaps them, gives those creatures +0/+3, and any creatures blocked by these creatures don't untap during their controller's next untap step, which I'm like, for 1 mana? That's amazing. If you have things like Fabled Hero on the board, even just, Fabled Hero, Agent of Fate, you can combo them to different things. You can go, okay, I'll block, or, I'll swing at you, my turn, trigger Heroic, trigger, Fate cast it, untap both, trigger Heroic, block here. I've got massive defense, but I've got counters here, you sack a creature there. It's just amazing what that card allows you to do. It just opens so many combat tricks, and it's really, really powerful. You just can't ignore that card. And so it definitely belongs in the deck, and it just gives it a lot of power and is a solid rock spell for triggering Heroic. Another spell, I think, actually, this one from black is Cutthroat Maneuvers. Now, not as cheap as the other two. I think this one has a converted mana cost of 3 or 4. But it's a great card. It triggers 2 creatures Heroics, and it gives each one +1/+1 and lifelink. This is a card I wouldn't say run a 4 of. Like, God's Willing and Dragon Tactics, you could get away with running 4 of, especially God's Willing. But this one, maybe a 2 of. Again, if you've got to the point where things like Fabled Hero are 5/5, 6/6, you're going to be able to gain a lot of life back from that. And even then, if it's not 5/5, even if it's only a 3/3, you cast that on it, becomes a 4/4, but gets +1/+1, so it becomes a 5/5. Swing, and it does 10 damage in its turn. It's able to block things really well and gain a lot of life. It's such a good card to be running in the deck. Although, as I say, because of its mana cost, probably only a 2 of, you wouldn't want to see it in your opening hand that often, you wouldn't want to be drawing it that often early game. But mid to late game, you want to be drawing it, it's such a good card to fit in the deck. I mean, you could run things like Whip of Erebos for Heroic triggers, but I definitely, in the deck, sorry, it wouldn't trigger Heroic. Actually, that's my point of why you wouldn't run Whip of Erebos for lifelink, because it doesn't trigger Heroic. And we don't really have anything that, because of the Heroic trigger nature of the deck, we don't really have anything that's necessarily going to make that big an impact if we bring it back from the graveyard. So running things like Cutthroat Maneuvers might be better. Now another reasonably good Heroic trigger we can run is Dauntless Onslaught. 3 converted mana cost, 1 white, 2 colourless, 2 target creatures you control. I don't think it's you control, it's 2 target creatures, get +2/+2 until the end of the turn. Again, a very efficient card. It triggers 2 Heroics and gives each creature +2/+2, which again is downright amazing if you've got things like Fabled Hero on the board. It's just a great way because it gives them +2/+2, +1 because of the trigger for Heroic. So you're already getting +3 for the turn, at least, well, +1 permanently, +3 overall from this one card. On a Fabled Hero, it's got double strikes. That's 6 damage there per Fabled Hero, and then again you can make them sack things that you could otherwise block with, and it does get it's such a good card to be running. Now, other cards you could be running in the deck are things like Nimbus Naiad. Now, again, these cards actually I'm coming up to now are the iffy. I wouldn't say they're rocks. I definitely wouldn't say they're cards you'd run all the time, but they are cards that could be ran and could make a bit of an impact to the deck. So let's say you could run Nimbus Naiad, 2/2 for 3 with flying. Bestows, I think, for 5, which is only a 2 mana cost increase. It's a great bestow cost. Triggers Heroic, gives it +2/+2 and flying, which again is great on either Agent of Fates or Fabled Hero. Such a good card, and definitely something I would run in sideboard, if not mainboard. There's also a card, Maletis Charlatan. It's not that great a card. I don't think, but when you're running Heroic trigger cards, being able to, even at the cost of 3 mana at late game, getting a copy of that spell, because that's what he does, he creates copies of the spell. Being able to run copies of the spell out, and then triggering Heroic again late game, can take this game, and could be viable. It definitely would take the deck from being more of an early game runaway deck to, okay, I didn't win the early game, but I can now win the mid to late game, maybe a little bit better. It's also a card that a lot of people think's amazing and probably wouldn't target, but can definitely have a big impact in the game. I'm not saying I'd run it mainboard necessarily, although I might run a single copy mainboard just to do things with. There's also the Daxis, again, not that great a card necessarily, but Night Veil Spectre sees play in Standard and Limited, where there's less, or in a Block Constructed where there's less removal. Might see a decent play. It gets you a lot of mana cost. It's probably more of a sideboard card that I'd sideboard into my deck against monsters. So you get rid of the cards on the top of their deck, gain life equals their converted mana cost. So against those decks that can swing big, like Polychronos decks, Armor Colossus decks that can swing for a lot of damage, you get a lot of life before they can play creatures, and it gives you the option to play them yourself. If you've got the mana open, it might be a viable option if you don't have cards in hand because you've played them all, because you've not got much card draw, it definitely gives you a way to get card advantage, pseudo card advantage against opponents. So I wouldn't say it's that bad a card. And again, with all the combat tricks you run, because it can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater, it can only be blocked by, it can't be blocked by cards that are guaranteed to kill it, like power 3, because it's only got 2 toughness, 2 power. But with all the combat tricks we run, we can make it stronger, and so it can only block by things it will kill easily. And as I say, actually, what we could also be running in this deck are things like the Ordeals. And I wouldn't say Ordeal of Heliod would be a good card. No. 10 Life's good, but not that good when we've got access to things like Cutthroat Maneuvers. But cards like Ordeal of Thassa and Ordeal of Erebos give you card advantage. I would say Thassa's better than Erebos, but there are times you might want Erebos in the deck. And again, if you have things like Daxos in your deck, definitely worth running. You can run a Ordeal onto Daxos. He swings, becomes a 3/3, can only block by 2/2, won't die. And will go and hopefully run away with the game on those basis. And again, because he can't be blocked, he can't be killed easily, and there's not much removal, it can easily get away with, getting you card, as I say, pseudo card advantage, and being a kind of hard to deal with, unblockable creature for them, and he does a lot of work. And so, I definitely think, considering the success of Night Veil Spectre, that, okay, a lot of that's due to Devotion, but no one can deny that in things like Pro Tour Theros, its ability to steal cards, especially in mirror matchups, was amazing. And Daxos doesn't care about mirror, he doesn't care about the mana, the colour of the mana, so you can play any card you get off it. It's amazing. I reckon actually he could be rather viable in Block Constructed actually. Think about that, it's not that iffy a card overall. Maybe one of in the deck, not sure. Because he's legendary, you can't run more than one of him at a time, so, you know, it will be interesting to see. Now, there are other cards, the Eidolons, Hope for Eidolon, Baleful Eidolon, Lifelink and Death Touch, which are viable in this deck as well. There is also the, what's it called? The one that gives you Intimidate, the black one. These are all viable runs in the deck, because it gives you creatures that you can run out if you need them, but also bestow onto your creatures to trigger Heroic. Although I wouldn't run that many of them, actually I'd rather run things like maybe the Emissaries. You run them bestow, they're expensive, but they're more of a late game Heroic trigger that can do some really interesting things, like the Heliod's Emissary that gives you like ability to tap down creatures, Thassa's which gives you card advantage. I can't remember what. The Ereboses which can discard cards to make it more powerful. Definitely very interesting ways to play the deck, especially with, as I say, combined with the double striking from Fabled Hero and just all-round power of this deck. So there's not really much else I can really need to say. The deck I think is going to be powerful. It has ways to run that'll be quite good. Maybe actually to include things like maybe Bident of Thassa. If you're running Thassa, you're already able to make creatures unblockable, and if you're running Daxos and Meletis, you're able to swing through their blockers. Half the time, occasionally. Well, maybe not half the time, but be able to swing through a few blockers here and there, and it gives you extra card advantage. And you really need card advantage to match up. It's we're going to be playing a lot of trigger and spells regularly. We're never really going to have a full hand, and always have it. You always want as many combat tricks in hand as possible to really manipulate the board state and run away with a heroic deck. So definitely running maybe a one-of Bident of Thassa. Wouldn't be that bad off. Again, maybe run the 6-drop blue, draw 3 cards, say mill 3 cards. Things like that are worth running in this deck. I mean, they're not instant speed, but card advantage is viable for the deck. You'll need card advantage at points of the game, which is actually why I'd say run Ordeals. They're heroic triggers that give you card advantage if they go off, and because we're able to protect our investments in our creatures, and they do give us a good investment in our creatures, it's probably worth doing. So that's really it when it comes to Esper Heroic. I'm too used to saying Esper Control. There's nothing else I'd really add to this discussion and talk about the deck. other than what's your opinion on this deck idea, don't be afraid to comment down below. I'd love to see your opinions. I'd love to engage in conversation with my viewers. And as I said before, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. I mean, given this deck actually, this is a deck actually with a few modifications you could run in a Friday Night Magic standard tournament. You would want to change a few things out. You'd want to put the ethereal armor in, you know, +1/+1 first strike for each enchantment, +1/+1 for each enchantment you control plus first strike. If you're going to be running a lot of stow and stuff, definitely very good. To put on things like Agent of Fates and stuff. So yeah, I definitely would recommend it. Again, I'm not saying it'll be a tier 1 deck. A lot of the other decks are really competitive, and as I say, this is really a deck that will hopefully change and evolve as new sets release, but really aimed for Theros Block Constructed. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I look forward to reading your comments, and I will see you next time.